Good day everyone. By the way, my name is Muads Magisulan, the first presenter for Group 4. So we were going to discuss the Victorian era social commentary and realism. But before that, let's discuss the Victorian era. The Victorian era expands the 63 years of Queen Victoria's reign over the Great Britain and Ireland from 1837 up until her death in 1901. So it was a time of great power and wealth for Britain. It expanded its empire across the globe. So who is Queen Victoria? So Queen Victoria was born May 24 and Kensington Palace, London, England, and she died January 22, 1901. So he is the Queen of Great Britain way back in 1937 to 1901. So 63 years of Queen Victoria's reign over Great Britain. So it was also a period of rapid advancement in science, industry, and arts, and so much political reform. Many of these advances have helped to shape the world as we know it today. So during that Victorian period, Queen Victoria have a lot of contribution in terms of industry in arts, advancement in science, transportation, agriculture, and medicine. So that is why safe to say that Queen Victoria played an important role during her era. So let's talk about life in Victorian era. So let's talk about life of many people during the time that Queen Victoria handled the Great Britain. So first, below the stairs at Audley End. Audley End was the most ambitious house of its period in England. So basically, Audley End, it is a palace in form of scale. It was a royal in all but name, intended to accommodate royal visitors in their progresses around the country. So this palace serves as a house where the visitor came if they have a progresses around the country. That is according to James 1, and James the First visited twice in Great Britain in 1640. So this is the palace, or this is the Audley End of the Great Britain, that many people wants to have that palace, because if they have this palace, they consider as a middle classes person way back in the era of Queen Victoria. So let's move on to Victorian daily life. Although the Victorian era was a period of extreme social inequality, industrialization brought about rapid changes in everyday life that affected all classes. Family life, epitomized by the young Queen Victoria, Prince Albert, and their 9 children, was enthusiastically idealized. So, during this time, Victorian era is considered as a period of extreme social inequality. Industrialization brought rapid changes. So, there's a lot of people that treatment there is inequality, brought about rapid changes. So, there's a lot of changes in everyday life that affect all the classes of the people way back in the time of Queen Victoria. Next is the middle classes. The tremendous expansion of middle classes in both numbers and wealth created a huge demand for goods and services. The pound was strong and the labor was cheap. So way back at the time of Great Britain by Queen Victoria, there's a lot of people that consider us in a middle classes, and they created a huge demand. So they are demanding for goods and services, and they found was strong and the labor was cheap. So they are overuse their power as a middle classes. So poverty. So way back the time of Queen Victoria, they also experienced a poverty. So there, just what I've mentioned a while ago, that the treatment of people the treatment of people is inequality. So that is why some people still experience a poverty because of the pound was strong and the labor was cheap. Next, luxury were unavailable to the million of worker poor who toiled for long hours in mills. Like that's what I've mentioned a while ago, that during the time of Queen Victoria, many people experience a poverty because of middle classes treatment to poor people. Luxuries were unavailable to the millions of working poor who toileted for long hours in mills like Stat Park Bobbin Mill in Cumbria, nine factories and docks. The dreadful worker and living condition of the early 19th century persisted in many areas until the end of the Victorian age. The dark shadow of the workhouse loomed over the unemployed and destitute. So next, let's proceed to diversions for all. Theaters, music halls, libraries, museum, and art galleries were built in major town and many minor ones. So there's a lot of theaters, libraries, music halls that other people built in every major town and also in minor ones, often founded by a new breed of philanthropists. So when we say philanthropist, it is a person who seek to promote the welfare of others, especially by the generous donation of money to good causes. So basically, philanthropist is a person who is the promoter of that kind of things. Seaside towns were no longer the preserve of the rich, and the place the great of Yarmouth and Blackpool developed as a popular resort for the working classes. Next is education and childhood. So during the time of Queen Victoria, education has been introduced to all people that lives in that area. Education come to be regarded as a universal need. So we all know that education is one of the important things that we need to learn, and as a universal need and eventually as a universal right. It was made a compulsory up to the age 10 in 1881. So education way back the time of Queen Victoria is a compulsory, meaning if you are not go to school, then education and childhood. Education come to be regarded as a universal need. So during the time of Queen Victoria, education has been introduced, and education, it was made compulsory up to the age of 10 in 1880. So if you are a child who at the age of 10 years old, then you are compulsory to go in school. To achieve education for all, many new state or board schools were established together with the church schools. By 1900s, there was near universal literacy, a colossal achievement considering how appalling the situation of poor children had been in 1930s. So let's proceed to Victorians' food and health. So way back in the time of Queen Victoria, there's a lot of food that has been introduced and also their wealth. Next, in the Victorian period, the growth of the railway network made it possible to transform food, the countryside to urban market much more easily. So that's what I've mentioned a while ago, that Queen Victoria have a lot of contribution in terms of industry and arts, advancement in science, and transportation. So one of the purpose of transportation is they can transport a food from the rural to urban, and urban to rural, and countryside to urban markets much more easily. Greatly improving the quality of produce available there. But there was still no cure for the most disease despite of innovation in medicine, and low life expectancy remained stubbornly low. So feeding cities. So way back during the time of Queen Victoria at the beginning of 19th century, all food was still produced locally. And since 4/5 of the population lived in the countryside, they had ready access to it. As more people moved into cities, however, it became imperative to find new ways to transport and store food. The arrival of the railways made it possible to move the basic English foodstuff, flour, potatoes, root vegetable, and beer at speed and over the great distances. So because of the transportation that Queen Victoria's contribution, the transportation of food like flour, potatoes, vegetable, and beer is much more easily at speed over the great distances. Next is celebrity chef. Throughout the 19th century, the most fashionable was French. Its dominance was encouraged by books by celebrity chef, most famously Marie Antoinette Carême, and way back 1783 to 1833. His art de la concise francaise, translated into English in 1836, was highly influential. Such works would doubtless have informed the food served at great houses like Wheatley Court, Worcestershire, and Audley and Essex. Beer and temperance. Beer was far the most popular drinks in Victorian England. In 1900s, annual consumption per head was 32.5 gallons, although it was weaker than beer today because of 1% to 3.5% proof compared with about 5%. There was a great disquiet about the influence of alcohol on society. And by the end of 1840s, a vigorous temperance movement had taken root. Some of the largest temperance rallies in northern England were held into Thornton Abbey, Lincoln Shrine in 1848 to 1851, attracting up 19,000 people. So imagine, 19,000 people is attracted of beer because of their alcohol effect. Next is the fight against disease. So during the time, they discover a lot of medicine that can fight against the disease of many people. Infectious disease were the greatest cause of Victorian mortality of the most of these, such as smallpox, tuberculosis, influenza, were all scourges. But in 1831, Britain suffered at first epidemic of cholera. Slowly, it was understood that it was spread by water contaminated by sewage. Life expectancy. Among the great 19th century advances in medicine were anesthetics, the revolution in nursing, investigate the Florence Nightingale, the identification of microbe as a cause of disease, and the development of antiseptic surgery. This innovation had little significant impact on lethal expectancy, though since most diseases remain incurable, although Victorians who attained adulthood could expect live into old age. Average life expectancy at birth as low in 1850 was 40 for men and 42 for men. By 1900s, it was 45 for men and 50 for women. So let's move on to Victorian religion. So during the time, there's a lot of religion that had been introduced. So I think the most, if I'm not mistaken, the most popular religion during this time is a Christianity. So Victorian religion, predominant at the start of 19th century. By the end of the Victorian era, the Church of England was increasingly only one part of vibrant and often competitive religious culture with non-Anglican Protestant domination enjoying a new prominence. The period also saw the greatest burst of church building the scenes of Middle Ages. Great Britain is considered as a Christian country. Throughout the 19th century, England was a Christian country. The only substantial non-Christian faith was Judaism. The number of Jews in Britain rose from 60,000 in 1880 to 300,000 by 1940 as a result of migrants escaping persecution in Russia and Eastern Europe. Within the overwhelming Christian majority, there were, however, many varieties of beliefs and many disagreements. Okay, so let's proceed to the expanding the church. So because of continuously increasing religion way back during the time of Queen Victoria, the religion is also expanding and also their church. The Church of England ended the century as it had begun, as the country's established church. Nonetheless, it had changed enormously. At the beginning of the century, the difficulty of creating new parishes, a process that until 1843 required an act parliament, meant that church was poorly represented in England's new manufacturing cities. Next is improving the clergy. One result of these changes was a major increase in the number of Church of England clergymen from 14,500 in 1841 to 24,000 in 17,000. So, did you notice the increasement of clergy way back this time? Their belief and practices were by no means uniform. At one extreme were an evangelicals who focus on gospel teaching rather than ritual and emphasize preaching and Bible studies. At the other, high churchmen revive rituals, images, incense, and vestment not seen in England since the Reformation. Next is other denomination. Legislation in 1820s had removed some of the barriers that had excluded Christians outside the Church of England, such as Catholic and Methodist, from most public offices and decrees at Oxford or Cambridge. So, during the time, Oxford and Cambridge is already established. So, we all know that Oxford and Cambridge is one of the famous university way back, up until now. Pressure for further change was encouraged when 1851 census revealed that out of the population of nearly 18 million, only 5.2 million attended Church of England services, with 4.9 million attending other Christian places of worship. The rise of non-Anglican Protestant domination, including Methodists, Baptists, and Quakers, is particularly striking. Between them, they represent nearly half the worshipping nation. This blow the Church of England led to pressure for further reforms, culminating in an 1871 Act Parliament that abolished all religious requirement for attendance at universities. Next is growing doubt and faith. So this is also this also talks about the religion. So 19th century was also the first time in England that substantial number of public figures openly declared that they had no religious beliefs. So during this time, they don't have a religion. So they are atheists. study of the scriptures and historical tests and scientific advances such as Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. So they most likely believe the theory of evolution by Charles Darwin, that all the people uh, came in the evolution, made it more difficult for many educated people to accept the literal truth of the Bible. So have you noticed the conflict between the theory of Charles Darwin and the acceptance of the literal truth of the Bible? So some intellectuals and writers rejected the teaching of Christianity altogether. Others, such as poet Alfred Tennyson, clung to their faith, believing where we cannot prove. So they believe where we cannot prove. That is according to Alfred Tennyson. That is one of his belief. But 19th century was far from irreligious, as the old centuries unrambled. New faiths emerged, such as spiritualism established in England by the 1850s and Theosophy, which drew on Buddhism and Hinduism. So during the religion of Victorian period, there's a lot of religion has been introduced, including the Hinduism, Christianity, and so on and so forth. But most likely they believe that other people believe the theory of Charles Darwin, the theory of evolution, that all people came from a monkey. And that's all for the Victorian era.
Okay, so good day everyone. So I am the second reporter of the group 4. So I'm going to discuss about Charles Dickens and his famous novel, which is the Tale of Two Cities. So but before we start, so I'm going to introduce you who is Charles Dickens. So Charles Dickens was an English novelist, journalist, short story writer, and social critic. So he created some of our literature's based non-fictional characters and is regarded by many as the greatest novelist of the Victorian era. So Charles Dickens in 1812 to 1870 most read Charles Laurie. He was one of the great English writers of the Victorian era. So in 19th century, he created some of the world's most well-known fictional characters. Is generally regarded as the greatest novelist of the period. So when we say fictional characters, so it is more on or based on a imagination. So next, so novel settings. So the novel sets in the two cities of London and Paris and their surrounding areas before and during the French Revolution. So below is the map to depict the settings. Most read the time frame for this novel is 1775 to 1793, or almost 18 years. So the novel was published in 1859, though originally written in serial form. Most read with well over 200 million copies sold. It ranks among the most famous work in the history of fictional literature. So as you can see here, there we have a map here. So in the upper portion, which is the Britain and its surrounding areas, which is London, Dover, and Calais. So in France, so the surrounding areas of France is Paris and Versailles. Okay. So next is I'm going to introduce you those characters or main characters in the novel of Charles Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities. So we have the main characters here. So we have Dr. Manette, Mr. Lorry, Miss Pross, Lucy Manette, Monsieur Defarge, Madame Defarge, Sydney Carton, Charles Darnay. So next, so I'm going to introduce you the rules in the story. So Jarvis Lorry, an officer of Tilson Bank, a loyal friend to the Manette family. So Mr. Lorry shepherded the family out of the Paris. So the doctors released from prison and during the Revolution. So next is Manette, Lucy Manette, a beautiful young woman recognized for her kindness and compassion. So after being reunited with her father, Dr. Manette, she cares from him and remains devoted to him even after her marriage to Charles Darnay. So even Lucy Manette is already married, but she never forget to give love and care for her father, which is Dr. Manette. Okay, so next is Dr. Alexander Manette. So he is a Lucy's father, so a French doctor. So he is also a prisoner on the Bastille for 18 years. So he suffers from mental trauma from the experience and loses his reason and thinks he is a shoemaker. So next character is Charles Darnay. So he is a Frenchman of noble family. Real name Charles Evermonde. So Lucy's husband. Next is Sydney Carton. So Sydney Carton is an unsuccessful lawyer. So he looks just like Darnay. So loves Lucy. So he is the one who is Lucy's secret. He is Lucy's secret. Sydney Carton is an unsuccessful lawyer. So he is also looks just like Darnay. So he loves Lucy. So Sydney is a person or a man who love Sydney or who love Lucy secretly. So he sacrificed his life to save Lucy's husband. Next is Ernest Defarge. So the owner of a wine shop in the Cours Saint Anthony. Ernest Defarge, the owner of a wine shop in the Cours Saint Antoine section of Paris. So he is a leader of the Jacquerie, a roving band of peasants during the French Revolution. So next is Madame Defarge. So Ernest Defarge's wife uses his knitting to write the names of the people that should be killed. So next is Miss Pross, Lucy's nurse and housekeeper. So remain Lucy's devoted servant and protector even the violent chaos of the Revolution. So Miss Pross is Lucy's servant or devoted and protector. So he is Lucy's maid or servant. Okay. So next is Mr. Straver, an ambitious lawyer. So proves Charles Darnay innocence in London. So aspire briefly to marry Lucy. So Mr. Straver, so he is a lawyer who makes and proves that Charles Darnay is innocent during the hearing in London. So now let's proceed to monarchy of France. King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. So King Louis XVI came to power after his father Louis XV's death on May 1774. So when King Louis XVI, so in 1754 to 1793, so he came to power after his father Louis XV's death in May 1774. So after his father died, he's the one who appointed to become a new king in France. So he married Antoinette of Austria. So he is last king of France and was executed by guillotine on January 21st, 1793. So Marie Antoinette in 1755 to 1793 became a queen at age of 19. So she is very young for her age to become a queen. So she married to King Louis XVI at the age of 14. So was famous for her lavish spending and being queen deficit by the French common people. So now let's proceed to the pre-revolutionary France. So the caste system in France left the people of France poor and starving, while the nobility prospered. So taxation was very high on all items because France did not trade many goods, and that is how the government earned its money. So during this time, the government of France was very strict, especially in trading goods, which results the poverty and hunger of their people there. So the people were also made to pay 1 out of 10 of what they earned to the church. So during this time, those people are compulsory to give of 1 out of 10 of what they earned. So they are going to give to the church. So France had also made an alliance with America and were helping fund the American Revolution. So during this time, France is one of the country which is helping and supporting fund during the American Revolution. So under the rule of King the 16th, France entered a state of financial crisis due largely to the 7 Years' War and support of America during the American Revolution. So as what I've said a while ago, that the reason why France have a financial crisis because they spent a large of money to support of American during the American Revolution. So 1/2 of the country budget was used to pay debt. So in 1791, he was tried by the National Convention and charged with treason. He has executed on January 21, 1793. His execution marked the end of absolute monarchy in France. So let's proceed to Diamond Necklace Affair. So Marie Antoinette is widely speculated to be a main catalyst of the French Revolution due to the diamond necklace. So the affair of the diamond necklace was important in discrediting the Bourbon monarchy in the eye of the French people 4 years before the French Revolution. So Marie Antoinette became even more unpopular, and malicious gossip about her made her a great liability to her husband. So here is the famous sayings of Marie Antoinette. So let them eat cake. So Marie Antoinette is famous for saying, "Let them eat cake," in response to the fact that many of France's lower class were starving. Perhaps it was she who was responsible for the French Revolution with her involvement of Diamond Necklace Affair. So let them eat cake, so is the most famous quote attributed to Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France, during the French Revolution. So as the story goes, it was the queen's response upon being told that her starving peasant subject had no bread. So here is a Versailles, uh, home of Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette. So here is the outside looks and landscaping. So Versailles inside the Hall of Mirrors and Versailles outside. So next, monarchy of England. King George III, 1738 to 1820, was England monarch during the American Revolution. In 1776, America pulled away from Great Britain to gain independence. Many in Britain viewed George III as a failure, since the colonies were lost under his reign. So during the time of King George, so they are not successfully wins about the colonies. So he was the first son of Frederick, Prince of Wales and Augusta. He happily married Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz in 1761. So George was afflicted with mental illness, specifically porphyria. As early as 1765, reign was given to his son George, the Prince Regent in 1811. George III died blind, deaf, and mad at Windsor Castle on January 29, 1820. So, London, England under reign of King George III. At that time, London was a dangerous place with a lot of crime, particularly robbery. So also, grave robbing was occurring at that time, as seen in the novel. So based on the novel, the story, during this time, London is not a safe city because of the presence of different crimes, especially robbery. So next is Paris. Under the reign of Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette came the French Revolution. So during the time of Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette, it is the time where the French Revolution happened. So third state citizen or commoners were very heavily taxed and starving. So during this time also, the taxes are very high, which results the poverty and starving of their commoners or the people in Paris. So let's proceed to the causes of the French Revolution. So the French Revolution was brought about by the suffering of France peasants who were literally starving and the general social problem in France. However, rumor has it that Marie Antoinette's diamond necklace affair was a catalyst of the revolution. So Antoinette here is one of the responsible. So she has responsible for the revolution. So storming of the Bastille. So Bastille is a prison place. So the Bastille was stormed by the mob joined by some of the king's soldiers on July 14, 1789. So the commander of the prison, Delaunay, attempted to surrender, but the mob denied his request. He, like all guards, was killed as they poured through the gates. Later in the day, the prisoners were released. This event is still annually celebrated in France. So during this time, some of the king's soldiers was attacked on the Bastille. So and let those prisoners inside set free. So this event is celebrated annually in France. Okay. So next is historical event. So here is the historical event of A Tale of Two Cities. So during the presence of Manet in prison is in 1757 to 1760. So Manet writes letter denouncing Evermond on 1770. So Manet released from prison during the American Revolution begins. So Darnay tried for reasons. Lucy Manet's marries Darnay is due on 1780. So when Darnay's daughter born, so it is on American Revolution ends. So Darnay imprisoned in Paris during on 1790. So execution of Louis the 16th. So Carton to the guillotine is executed of Marie Antoinette. Then until 1800s. Okay, so let's proceed to the brief summary of the story. So first is when Dr. Manet escaped prisoner in the Bastille. Next is when Lucy meets her dad for the first time. So next, in London, when the jury notices the likeness of Carton and Charles. Then after the trial in London. So next scene is in the France, the cruel Marquess Evermond runs down a common child with his courage and doesn't care. Next is Miss Pross and Mr. Lorry breaks the shoemaking bench of the door. Next one is the Defarge confuses Carton with Charles. So next is Darnay is sentenced to death. So the next, Carton sacrifices his life to save Darnay. Then Lucy and Darnay get married. Sidney Carton is recalled to life and they live happily ever after. The end. Thank you.
Jane Eyre is a classic novel by Charlotte Bronte, first published in 1847. It follows the life of the eponymous heroine Jane Eyre from her difficult childhood as an orphan to her growth into a strong, independent woman. The novel explores themes of class, gender, and morality, and is noted for its strong, complex protagonist and its critique of social norms. Key elements include Jane's Tutulmus relationship with Mr. Rochester, the enigmatic master of Thornfield Hall, and her struggle for her self-respect and autonomy throughout the narrative. The novel is celebrated for its rich character development and its exploration of the inner life of protagonist. Jane Eyre is a Victorian novel that chronicles for a woman's quest for love in search for identity. First published in 1847, the book became a bestseller and established a platform for feminist writing in 19th century. Jane Eyre, the protagonist and narrator of the novel Jane, is an intelligent, honest, plain-featured young girl that has to face oppression, inequality, and hardship. Although she meets a series of people who threaten her autonomy, Jane repeatedly succeeds at preserving herself and maintains her principles of justice, human dignity, and morality. She also values intellectual and emotional fulfillment. Her strong belief in social equality, challenging the Victorian prejudice against women and poor. So the characters of the story, the Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte is Jane Eyre, the protagonist of the novel, si Mrs. Sarah Red, widow of Jane's uncle, Eliza Red, oldest daughter in the Red family, Georgiana Red, youngest daughter in the Red family, John Airy, only son in the Red family, and a Boley cousins Jane. Busily servant at Gateshead Hall, Mrs. Temple, kind teacher at Lowood School, Helen Burns, Jane's best friend at Lowood School, Mr. Bucklehurst, headmaster at Lowood School, Edward Fairfax Rochester, master of Thornfield Hall, Bertha Rochester, midwife of Edward Rochester, Adele, ward of Mr. Edward Rochester, Jane's pupil at Thornfield, Mrs. Alice Fairfax, housekeeper at Thornfield Hall, St. John Airy Rivers, minister of the parish of Morton, Diana and Mary Rivers, sister of St. John Rivers. Charlotte Bronte, she is the author of Jane Eyre. Charlotte Bronte, born April 21, 1816, Thornton, Yorkshire, England. Died on March 31, 1855, Haworth, Yorkshire. Was an English novelist noted for Jane Eyre, 1847, a strong narrative of a woman in conflict with her natural desires, social condition. The novel gave new truthfulness to Victorian fiction. She later wrote Shirley, 1849, and Violet, 1853.
Emily Bronte. Emily Bronte was born on July 30, 1818 in Thornton, Yorkshire, which is located in England. She was born to her mother, Maria Branwell Bronte, and her father, Patrick Bronte, and was the fifth of 6 children. Unfortunately, Emily and her family lost her mother early on, just shortly after her younger sister Anne, who eventually became a writer too, was born. As a result of losing her mother, Emily's maternal aunt, Elizabeth Branwell, took on the responsibility as a mother and caretaker of the family and came to assess the family. Both Patrick and Elizabeth Branwell were Methodists, and this is where she got some of her religious education. Tragedy struck the Bronte family once again, when Emily was 7, when her 2 older sisters Elizabeth and Maria died from tuberculosis. After this, Emily's father made the decision to keep his daughters at home instead of sending them back to school. It is perhaps this turn of events that helped Emily and her 2 sisters become writers, since most of their free time was now spent at home reading and brainstorming and exchanging stories between siblings. Emily, her 2 sisters, Charlotte and Anne, her brother, and even her father are all said to have had great imaginations and creativity. Though Emily had many deaths in her family, her upbringing was reported as surprisingly normal. Emily went on to write almost 200 poems in her life, but only a small fraction were published in her lifetime. Her only novel, Wuthering Heights, is one of her most famous works. Emily was often seen as a very strange woman who never was able to live this isolation. This made her seem even more mysterious and created many myths about her. Not much is known about the last couple of years of Emily's life except for the fact that her family continued to be cursed with sickness. These included her father becoming nearly blind and her brother dying from consumption, also known as tuberculosis, in September 1848. She became sick with consumption and refused medical attention in October 1848. Emily sadly died at the age of 30, only a few months later on December 9, 1848. Throughout the Victorian era, social class was an important topic of debate, and that can be seen throughout Wuthering Heights. This topic clearly influences Emily's work, since society was very concerned with one social class as well as the restricted rights for women, despite a woman's social class status. Emily described how one social class affects his or her character rather than discussing the issue as a satire. Throughout her work, Emily displays a focus on the facts that action have consequences and that the characteristic that one displays is very important to their overall character as a person. Her focus on the issues of conduct also helps to contribute to make Wuthering Heights a realistic novel. During this time period, there was also a loss of optimism and a sense of uncertainty in what was to come. This may be reflected in Emily's work, as Wuthering Heights constantly has people dying rather unexpected and most of the people end up living pretty miserable lives. Facts about Emily Bronte. First, she was born on July 30, 1818 in the town of Turton, Yorkshire in England. Second, 6 siblings and she was the 5th. Grew up in the town of Howard. Died on December 19, 1848. And last, she is very well known because of English. She is an English novelist and poet, best remembered for her only novel, Wuthering Heights. Successful sisters. So, Charlotte is one of the sister of Emily Bronte. She published Jane Eyre in 1847, while Emily Bronte published her own works, Wuthering Heights, in 1847. So, these are the following samples of their work. And many of her poems were created for the Gondal Saga and deal with love, political intrigue, rebellion, war, imprisonment, and exile. Emily's poem shows a desire to break with the constrictions of ordinary life. Her views of a visionary world identify her with the Romantic poets, particularly Byron and Shelley. However, her hymn-like stanzas shows her individualism with their haunting qualities. And Emily, Charlotte, and Anne published a collection of their poems under the pseudonyms Currer, Alice, and Action Bill. Although the collection was not widely read, it encouraged them to each work on a novel. Emily wrote A Wuthering Heights and was working on her second novel at the time of her death. Wuthering Heights. So, it is a novel that was written by Emily Bronte and was published in 1848. The story follows two intertwined families, the Earnshaws and the Lintons. Heathcliff, an outsider and new member of the Earnshaw family, exacts revenge on those who scorned him and erected barriers between him and his love, Catherine. So followed by, what is the storyline of the Wuthering Heights? The storyline of Wuthering Heights is narrated by Mr. Lockwood as he learned about the events that took place between Catherine, Earnshaw, and Heathcliff. Heathcliff came to live with the Earnshaw family as a child. He was shunned and abused while living with the Earnshaws. Cathy Earnshaw was always kind to him, and the two fell in love. However, Cathy felt she could not marry him, and instead married Edgar Lenton. Heathcliff ran away and came back years later after acquiring some unknown fortune. After Cathy died in childbirth, Heathcliff created a plot to have his sickly son marry Cathy's daughter. Eventually, after a sudden mental decline, Heathcliff dies in his room after not eating for several days. Is Wuthering Heights a love story? A Wuthering Heights can be called a love story. Catherine and Heathcliff have an epic love between them, but unfortunately, they are never able to be with one another. What is the main idea of Wuthering Heights? So the main idea of the Wuthering Heights is that it is a gothic novel about severely toxic relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff. Heathcliff came from unknown circumstances and was abused and ostracized by nearly everyone. Heathcliff and Cathy loved each other deeply, but could not be with him. She ultimately believed that she could help raise him in society by marrying her rich neighbor, Lenton. The novel focuses on mental illness, abuse, trauma, love, and revenge. Thank you.